like, what I like, what I like, what I like. I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. All right, what's up, world? Welcome to another edition of I Mix What I Like Live, a very special edition, a Sunday edition with my man 2 Black. Good morning, sir.
What up, what up, what up? Yeah, I was telling you I'm not a morning person, so this should be fun.
No, we appreciate it. I definitely appreciate it. And you know, I cannot resist, but I think that this is also episode 1 of the special series, 2 Black and Not Black Enough. A new special series here on Black Power Media, occasionally popping up. No, I could resist. I appreciate you doing this, man. And for those who are joining us, good morning. Please, as always, invite your friends, family, foes, colleagues, comrades, compradors, colleagues, etc., to come on in. If you can, hit the like, share, and subscribe buttons and all of that good stuff. And get ready to get into this good conversation we're going to have about the myth of the circulating black dollar, or dollar at all, circulating dollar for anyone myth. And 2 Black, of course, you are a co-host and co-creator of the Black Myths podcast, and we are very happy that you all have jumped on with BPM. And folks, if they didn't already know, see the great work, and you have been killing it on this issue. So when you sent me something most recently that we're going to get to in a minute, I was just like, man, we should please come on and let's have some fun with this, because
yeah, and a little more backstory. This is all your fault, right? So like when I was in college, just for the listeners, we talked about this before on one of our pod episodes, but I was really into this stuff. Like, actually, on the other side of the argument, like I was the kid that was like talking about we need to support Black business, and you know, I was like 20 years old, so I didn't know much, and then I remember I was on the 3rd floor, and I went to Ball State University. And I used to read Black Agenda Report. That's probably one of the websites that saved me from getting caught up in a lot of liberal bullshit. Anyway,
a lot of us.
Yeah. So, and I'm looking at, I saw your piece pop up, and I was like, huh? You know, because I never heard anybody challenge this. I get mad when stuff like when I'm really invested in stuff. So I was really mad at you for a second, and then by like the second or third piece, I had to let it go, and I was like, yeah, there's no real basis for it. But it took me a while to like reorientate, because in my head, it just that idea that it all trickled down made sense. So I understand and empathize with people. My overall point, why they fall for this stuff. Like I
no question. Yeah. All right, but before we get to that, there are a couple things, somewhat less serious that I wanted to just quickly shout out as we again let people come on in. And again, peace to everybody. You know, a lot of the regulars, David Silberg, Dawn Gibson, Michael Brown, shout out, Eric Berkeley, Big Teal. Good morning, everybody. A couple things that just real quick. First of all, just once again, somewhat related to what we're going to be talking about today. I get the Google alerts, so I just wanted to let everybody know that once again, we're back to the promotion of the buying power myth, and we are going to talk more about this and why it, how this continues to happen, and why, as you were just saying, so many of us get caught up in it, because you see these celebrities. I don't think that they mean harm. And she's saying, she wants to explain her pattern hair care line, supports curly, coily, and tight textured community. Okay, all of that good stuff. And then, you're just reading along, and then there it is. The understanding of Is it because I want? Oh, the understanding of the buying power, the Black purchasing power, I think is often underestimated. My fame was not where it was. The beauty industry was not awake to the importance of the extraordinary beauty of curly, coily, and tight textured community. All right, so I mean, she just
hold up, man. You're probably being nice
ahead.
to me because my thing is they always act like there's just awakening happening, you know. And it was funny, we were talking about a Black awakening in capitalist America. We're talking about that book or whatever. But like, so there's always this idea that now the world is finally ready to support Black people. But when you track this, every era somebody says this.
That's right.
So in 2001, you can find somebody saying this. Now, well, we want to support natural hair. Like, we've been doing that for at least 10 years, even in my age group. So I don't know,
right?
You know. So
no. Sorry, go ahead. Sorry, my bad.
No, I just feel like they're part of this is just part of marketing, is trying to make it seem like what you're doing is new and it's fresh, and it's not. You know.
No, right on. I mean, absolutely. Nothing really to add on there. Just again, how it continues as a myth to perpetuate. And again, the point is that is less stated in this one that we talked about continuously, is that it's really about getting ad revenue to Black owned businesses.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that was just one thing real quick. Another thing, I don't even have anything to show on this. I just wanted to say that because somebody who's been watching, and my bad, because I heard him correcting other people, and I wouldn't certainly want to get caught up in this. It's not Kwame Brown, it's Kwame Brown. Kwame. And he was making it, and apparently Stephen A. Smith has been intentionally saying Kwame and not Kwame, which is how his mother wanted it to be pronounced. So Kwame Brown. But in watching all that, a lot of this stuff is being exposed. And one of the things that I just enjoyed watching is that Stephen A. Smith and Jason Whitlock are beefing with each other, which if anybody follows any of this, to me, it's just hilarious. It's just hilarious. And it's like, can everybody lose? That's all. I just want to see it. I just because this is a win-win for me. I mean, and I don't, if you have anything you can say, I don't even know what else to say. It's just funny. It's
funny you bring up Jason Whitlock, because again, I went to Ball State. He graduated from Ball State, and I was in the TCOM department, and I was part of the National Association of Black Journalists in school. And I didn't like him back then. So I remember when he came to speak, it's a funny story. Like the president had to hold me back, because like I had tabs of articles ready to ask him questions. This is back when he said Serena had an onion booty. And he said, he said Black people were the Black KKK. And this is when he was talking about Sean Taylor and how basically he deserved to die. Like, I remember all of this. So when he
Michael Wilbon was guilty of that too.
Yeah.
Sorry, my bad. Yeah.
So when he came to speak and everybody took a picture with him, I was the only student that just stayed in my seat. Like, I remember him looking at me, and I'm just like, yeah, it's not going to happen. Like, I just, because I grilled him on a few questions, and then I got told to let it go. But yeah, I never liked that dude.
So we slowly getting the origin stories of the superhero too Black. You were already too Black. He was already looking at him like, I'm too Black, Jason. No, man, Whitlock is just a mess, man. He has been for a long time. And Stephen A. Smith is the liberal, he's the Democratic Party mess. And
if that.
If that. I mean, you're right. I mean, it's just, well, he purports himself to be.
He got bodied by, did you ever see when he got bodied by Dyson, which is embarrassing to get bodied by Dyson, but that's neither here nor there. But he got bodied by Dyson on his own show. Dyson destroyed him because he was on that respectability tip, and that's one thing Dyson does get right, and he just bodied him. Well,
I can't front. I mean, it never aired, but those who were in attendance at that Real News event, I got bodied by Dyson too. I mean, it was a bad day. But I will note, it was me and Glenn Ford against Michael Eric Dyson, and is it James? I always get it. Is it James Peterson or Patterson?
I think it's Patterson. but
both of them have been, if you follow the details and the crumbs, have been chased out of their respective institutions with allegations of sexual misconduct and all kinds of other shady, So I just want to point out, we may have lost the debate. I may have lost the debate, but
if I remember correctly,
anyway, I'm just saying,
I think I heard you talk about that before. I think you said like it was a short. You didn't have enough time to talk, right? Was that?
No. It was. I mean, there was a lot of stuff going wrong, but my point is that if you just watch it objectively, Dyson won. I mean, his performance was better. I mean, he didn't have more of a substantive argument, but he just I got angry. I was like, I was not, and there was a lot of other things happening that were distracting, like the fact that we were doing this at the Real News. That's a longer story. I mean, it was a whole, I felt, I just saw in the moment, I'll just leave it here. I had seen myself getting caught up in my own dumbness. And as a result, it was just a bad performance.
Yeah,
but
Glenn Ford got him back on Democracy Now, though. So
that had already happened. That had already happened.
Okay.
This is after that. This is around when Dyson was saying at the time the radical thing was to support Hillary Clinton. And I was just trying, and to me, I'm sitting there thinking this is the most obvious explanation of where you are politically, and this is what should be the political outing I've been waiting to have happen on this guy, and it just didn't work. I mean, he was skillful, and then they played the whole look at this guy's angry, and I'm in the community and in the churches, and he's just upset, and Glenn was, I think Glenn was sick that day or something, so he wasn't on the top of his game either. So I was like, but I was just definitely not on mine. So he was just dipping and diving and doing his reverend speak and the whole I'm on MSNBC all the time type thing, and my brother's in jail and all that kind of stuff. So I was like, nah.
Yeah, he pulled on the heartstrings. Yeah, I mean, I've been in those moments. I've lost those too sometimes. It was just like, I can't compete with all this. Yeah.
And if and it's another, he had also, I have to say, on his radio show back in the day, in the early 2000s, he outmaneuvered me too. Him and John McWhorter teamed up, which was, that to me was more of the evidence. But anyway, but anyway, I'm just glad to see the Stephen A. Smith, Jason Whitlock battle. And I just think that's funny. And two more quick things before we get to this one thing, and then we're gonna get to this other thing. Shout out to the Maryland Bobcats football club. Had a great time out there last night, supporting my cousin-in-law in their 2-1 victory in the I don't know, the second division pro leagues of professional soccer. And on our anniversary night, it was a great night. So shout out to them. Great time. Cicadas and all. Happy
anniversary to you and your wife as well.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much. 17 years, man. But as she'll tell you, it took 10 to get me, to be workable. But and then the other thing I just want to say to anybody who's ever drummed on a drum kit, I just want to say shout out to Larnell Lewis. I just been watching a lot of his videos. This brother is just insane. Fusion jazz drummer, but does all, like, he's just, I don't even like fusion jazz that much musically, but just to see what he does with the drums is just, I gotta just shout him out for that. All right. So then the other thing that I was asking you about before is that for a long time, I used to watch the battle rap scene very closely, dropped out of it for a while, but have since come back because of all of the YouTube channels and conversation about battle rap, which to me is almost more interesting than battle rap itself. So I want to just share this quick clip, and then this is actually a perfect segue to what we're going to talk about here in a minute, because for anybody who remembers or is still paying attention now, Cassidy here on the right, He's going to be talking on this clip here on MathHoffa's TV channel. Shout out to Math. He responded to me on Twitter, so I appreciate that. But I just want to watch, just check what he's saying here for a couple of minutes, and then I think you'll see where the perfect segue will come in.
Where the energy at in the world, love it, bro. Niggas just gotta get serious. Niggas gotta get serious with this shit. Take this shit serious.
You can hear at least something, right?
Now you came on.
Okay.
Go ahead.
You think if if the leagues can get past all the pettiness, emotions, and things like that, we can flourish. Everybody can flourish.
Nah, it's gonna flourish regardless. It ain't based around the leagues. The leagues is just trying to get the energy off battle rap. Battle rap existed before any leagues. I was battle rapping before any of these leagues started. These leagues started off of my energy. It seemed like, yo, battle rap is that wave. If we do something with this, we can make money. That's why the league started. It's not like the league started battle rap. Battle rap started the leagues.
Right.
So it's like the battle rap energy don't have to rely on no league. And that's why I wanted to show niggas that. That's why I'm not dedicated to no league. That's why I do business with every league. Facts. It don't matter. Whoever bring the right business to the table at the right time, I do business with them. And I show that they can all be successful. So I don't need no league to show nothing. The biggest league at the time is whatever league I'm doing business with at the time. That's the biggest league.
My man, talk your shit. Talk your shit, Cash.
How much millions you got backing you, who you got connected with, it don't matter. Whoever I'm doing business with at the time is the biggest league. And I showed that time and time again. Like it ain't like I'm lying or he's delusional. Nah, check the statistics. Do your history. Time and time again. I show niggas that. It don't matter who cut the check, who behind me, and none of these niggas come up with the strategy or the blueprint. I do. I'm the energy, and I represent battle rap and the culture. All these niggas I got in here represent the battle rap and the culture. These niggas is the energy. You don't need no league. The leagues need us. If it's not for us, no leagues don't exist, my nigga.
My nigga, yo, Day, ain't that been the song? That's the song. That's the song right there.
That's the union shit.
That was the line right there.
That's the union shit.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody can rap. I'm talking about the real energy. The real rappers, the real niggas. Like, you need us. Or no leagues ain't gonna exist. And all of the copycats that follow us is not gonna exist. They ain't gonna have shit to follow. All these niggas ain't innovators just because they hot. They hot because we gave them something to follow to get hot. If we not around, what the fuck is they gonna follow?
All right, that was it goes on, and I put the link in the show notes, so I encourage people to check out. Actually, a lot of these discussions, the reason I had reached out on Twitter to MathHoffa, I have a longstanding appreciation for him in battle rap separately, but watching all of these discussions he's having about battle rap and with all of these people in that community, it crosses over into so many interesting politics. So I was just shout out to Kalanji sipping some nearest. And watching and thinking, like, if I could put I was just thinking, I would like to see his crew in conversation with our crew, and just, because anyway, that's all. So when I see that, and I see Cassidy, breaking down the colonial relationship, the imposition of leagues and marketers and advertisers all looking to extract the raw source of that energy, and then without it being officially organized, as he's saying in terms of the discussion, somebody's even acknowledging that's union shit, and I'm like,
yeah. I mean, I think
anyway.
I don't think brothers like that get enough credit. Where even if they're not thinking in a way that some academics might want to hear, as far as how they phrase things, but they're really just saying, like, the workers make the shit happen. That's all he's saying. Like, you can have a league, you can name it whatever, but we're the product. We put in the labor, we put in the work, we produce the wealth. That's all I heard. And nothing you set up is gonna work without us. You know what I mean? So give us our cut. That's yeah.
And as they talk about even a little bit more in the clip, I mean, I don't think that the word is used, but it's a discussion of redistribution.
Yeah.
It's a discussion of we are creating, and actually several of the conversations I watch them have is a discussion of the redistribution. How the big pots in these competitions are being officially or unofficially divided up, how they're being generated, how the game, there's discussions of contests being rigged and all kinds of other stuff. I mean, but really they're trying to figure out how do you get more people more of the money. And what Cassidy was saying is earlier was, why are people still battling for $1,000 and $3,000? Like, why are people still doing that? It should be way more. Anyway, so and you could transpose that argument to any field.
Yeah. As an artist, I know how that goes. Like, we get pitted against each other all the time. So who can wear the crown or whatever. So yeah.
All right. Anyway, so all right. So in terms of speaking of redistribution and circulation, you sent me a message the other day and said, by the way, I found this article that might extend the conversation some more. And it's from a December I don't know why this date is there, because the article is from December of 2015. So I don't know if that was when
they kind of update that at the top of the site, even though that's not even today's date, but it tends to do that. I've read through the site, the fact check part, just for a few things here and there, or enduring myths. Yeah. So
okay, right. Exactly. But anyway, so I'll let you start if there was something, if there was a specific way you wanted to approach this. But to me, it's fascinating because they do a lot of interesting work to ultimately challenge the claim, even as they perpetuate other myths. Yeah.
I mean, just to give people a backdrop who may have not heard the episodes that we did, or the one that you were on, like part of the Black Myths podcast, we had just did the myth being Black Wall Street is self-sustaining. I'm not going to expand on that too much because I want to stick on this, but this is an extension of that, because one of the claims that we went over on part 2 with Dr. Barkle, check that out, it's on Black Power Media, was this claim that the dollar circulated 36 to 100 times back during the time of Tulsa. And so we just follow the links. Literally, we just follow the links, and it takes us to a .biz site that looks like it wants to steal your money. It looks like, so it literally follows to a site that has .biz, which is always suspect, like I said, and it looks like it was made on MySpace, for those of us who are old enough to remember that. So it's like, there is no reference, is my point. It doesn't actually take us to any study, takes us no primary source. It does not point us to anything that it shows us how the dollar circulates. So what we find is these claims. I'm sure anybody's been in the spaces, any, not even just national space. You hear this in Black capitalist space, Black liberal spaces. You hear this, the Black dollar we don't support each other. The Black dollar circulates 6 times. I've heard less. I've heard it only stays in our community for 15 minutes. We back in the day used to stay, and there's no context to it. So with Black Wall Street, we were saying, like, one, most of the people were working class or poor. There's studies on that. And we reference that self-sustaining does not simply just mean you have a few businesses. That actually means you are separate and isolated to your own, and you live within your own space, and you take care of everything. So if you live in a commune, you grow your food, you have your tools, you take care of your kids, you build your homes, you have all the resources you need in your space. You don't leave it for anything. That's what self-sustaining actually means. There's another word for it, I think it's autarky or something like that. And this is a debate amongst, like, communists and anarchists and socialists as far as whether you should be self-sustaining on your own or whether you should trade with other communities or other countries, depending on where you're at. That's what self-sustaining means. That's not, but it gets depicted as, oh, Black people got a few businesses. And another thing, and then I'll let you go. The way we talk about Black Wall Street, I think I tweeted it, has kings and queen energy to me. Like, we were kings and queens. you know, like it's very infantilizing of Black people. So it's like, oh, look, they had businesses, they had their own thing. Wow, like we couldn't do it or something, you know. So it's like, oh man, we had kings and queens, but then also kings and queens is a very like, it's a monarchy. Is that what you want, right? So it's like with Black businesses, it's not a monarchy. I don't want to be generic, but it's a very top-down structure where a few people benefit, and then the rest of us are broke. And like I said with Tosa, most people did not work in Black Wall Street. Most people worked at white businesses. Most people had poor living conditions. Most of the Black people in Greenwood. These are facts. So that's how we came across this myth. We were trying to clarify it from back then to today, and that's how we get to the 6 hours.
Hey, and look, Richard Wolff, the economist whose work I pay attention to, he makes the point that the proof that this country is not democratic, to your point about the business model replicating the monarchy, is that given the importance of the workplace to the average worker in the U.S. economy, if we were truly a democracy, you would find democracy in the workplace, meaning workers had actual control and votes and meaningful, input, which it doesn't exist. So his point is, if he does start to replicate, and I think this is where, there are some limitations in our agreement, but, because he says that's the modern day master slave relationship has been replaced with a worker employee. I mean, a boss employer employee is now the master slave. And I think there's some shortcomings of that. There are ways that is, anyway, but I think, but I think largely he makes a good point to support what you're saying there. And for me, the only other preamble that I would add, just as I said on your show, is that I never even did what I thought was so much fun to have you do on your show, to go and look for proof of a circulating dollar, because having read what I felt and feel is a fair, at least, amount of economic data, research, history, so on and so forth, no one ever talks about circulating dollars, not even to discredit it. So it's just never there. So I just left it at that, was like, it can't be real, and has to be fake. But I think what you did was that much more important. So when you sent this, I was like, this is just another version of.
Yeah. And if you Google like dollar circulation, the only thing that's going to come up is currency, how much physical money is in the economy. Like I did it last night. You have to be specific and type in like dollar circulation in the community. And it's only references to Black people. It's not references to anybody else. Like there's no article. There's no articles. And so I was like, maybe it's my algorithm. So I went under an email I never used. And it still did it. Like, so it still showed up that it was just only articles about Black people. It's not reference. It doesn't even talk about Latino. No other ethnic group, no other race. Just us. It's the only people. Like I couldn't find anything on white people saying, man, like poor white folks. I don't know. We need to circulate the cracker dollar more. You don't read it. You know what I mean? So it's just like it's just us, and that's unfortunate. That's it.
Anyway, that for me is really, all jokes aside, is what has always drawn me to these very topics, is that these are directed only at us. That this is not. Nobody says this, and from conservative to radical, Black, white, or other economists, nobody talks about this, and nobody, anyway. So I appreciate what this website at least starts off with. I think we'll get to some of the shortcomings here, but Brookie Madison, if I'm pronouncing the name correctly, is the author here, and again, this is from December of 2015. And I love how it starts off with, to me, on so many levels, some of which are petty, I admit, this is so funny to me, because the first line is, 2 weeks ago, journalist Roland Martin, host of News One Now, cited a figure that has often been used to show how little Blacks spend in their neighborhoods compared to other racial and ethnic groups. So there's a number of, I think there's so many jokes in that first, journalist, host, News One, He's not there anymore. Why? All it, and after coming even to Morgan State and telling everybody, and it causing a little back and forth for us even on Twitter, because I was like, man, you coming here telling people basically they need a white sponsor to get into a black corporate media job, and that is the pinnacle of their aspiration. I was like, wow, how did we get there? Now he's not even there anymore, and now he's anyway. So, but he starts off with this, which was the lifespan of a dollar in the Asian community is 28 days. In the Jewish community, the lifespan of the dollar is 19 days. And the lifespan of the African American community is approximately 6 hours, Martin said during his talk show on the black-owned cable network TV One. Yeah, I'm gonna stop. I just wanted to finish the sentence. Yeah, I got you. I see you. He's like flag waving. He's like, stop. So go ahead, man.
I mean, we said this on an episode. I mean, they're gonna get to some of this. I don't want to jump too far ahead, but the Asian community, right? Like, they don't all live in the same neighborhood. So what are we talking about? Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, they be like the Asian community. The Asian community is actually less monolithic than black people. Like, black people are much more monolithic, if you want to use that word.
More.
Yeah. So you're talking about
more
Vietnamese people, Taiwanese people, Chinese, Japanese. You're talking about Korean. You're talking like, come on. If you do any basic history, you would know those groups I just named. That's not even all Asians. Don't all get along. They have wars amongst each other.
Remember when Chris Rock did his joke about the most racist person is an old black man or something like that?
Yeah.
Try talking to an old Korean or Vietnamese or even Chinese person about the Japanese. See what comes out there. Get them a couple drinks and lay back with them on that conversation. You're gonna hear a lot of wild stuff, man.
But they're circulating dollars. I'm gonna circulate dollars with the person who tried to colonize me. Okay, gotcha.
Repeatedly, you know what I'm saying? Like, over and over again. Anyway, but okay. So
there's no source. Yeah. I just want to say there's no source of that. But go ahead.
Right. There's no source in this piece. There's no source that this author can point to that Roland Martin is pointing to. So they just move on. Maggie Anderson, a guest on the show, and author of Our Black Year: One Family's Quest to Buy Black in America's Racially Divided Economy, which was published in 2012, nodded in agreement. Anderson is a proponent of black spending more with black-owned businesses. Anderson, a proponent of black spending more with black-owned businesses, has often used the 6 hours figure in a series of talks around the country and in her book. She uses the figure to argue that African Americans need to do more to support black-owned businesses. Anderson is not alone. Now, I talked about her earlier this year because early this year at a speech, I think it was at Emory for Black History Month, she did the whole thing of saying that Dr. King never had to say buy black because the black business community was always right there rocking with him. That was her argument. When in fact, if you just go and look in Where Do We Go From Here, Chaos or Community, he not only does he not say what she says, he specifically says buy black campaigns don't work because we don't have any money and you need federal infusion of cash to the black community, blah, 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 blah.
And you need to be integrated. And he says you need to be integrated with the red, not integrated in the way we understand it, but integrated with the overall economy. Like you have your money has to go everywhere, not just in your neighborhood. Yeah.
And that's why Marissa Baradaran keeps saying you can segregate people, but you cannot segregate money. And that was all that he was talking about. So it was, I appreciate you making that point. He was not just, let's all integrate. And people, and I know you're going to talk about this later, but that organization, but people should always be reminded the SCLC, his organization, never had white leadership. So he was never, seeking to integrate in that way. He was saying anyway, so that's a whole even, but anyway. Then of course they go ahead and they mention my favorite group here. The figures have first, and this is where it gets really funny for me. Again, I got the pettiness starts to come out, right? Even more. The figures have been attributed to various sources, including the NAACP and the Selig Center. what happened to my mouse? And the Selig Center for Economic Growth at the University of Georgia, they leave out the part, in the Terry Business College, in the Bank of America building. That's always
the Bank of America. The Bank of America one always gets me. Like, yeah.
like it's because they're the ones. Anyway, they're gonna help us figure us anyway. But as is asked here, does $1 spent by Black people really stay in the community for only 6 hours? The facts. The fact-check statistic, Truth Be Told News, tried to track down the source of the widely cited figure. Several federal government agencies produce data on Black spending patterns. The Federal Reserve publishes a survey of consumer finance that contains information on consumer spending patterns, but it does not contain the level of detail that would show how often $1 would circulate in a given community. The Bureau of Labor Statistics also produces reports on Black spending patterns, but this data does not show how often money circulates within the neighborhood. And by the way, as I point out, because I've referenced this stuff a lot, they're not even talking about buying power in the way that has been popularly misunderstood. And they actually use a very different metrics. They use very different metrics to reach their conclusions than are used in the never explained and very different version that is developed by the Selig Center in their reports. But anyway,
right, and they're not even in this, they're not tracking this idea of money circulating. They're just saying, people buy this many, this accessory, they spend this much on this accessory or that accessory. That's that does not track how much money, quote unquote, circulates. And again, circulation, just to be clear, is a very amorphous concept, which we'll get to further later. But
right. And did you want to say any more about Maggie Anderson, the Anderson's book at this point? Go ahead.
I guess I remember hearing about that book, and I think a thing. Well, the premise of the book was they tried, if I remember correctly, they tried to spin with Black businesses for a year, and they found how hard it was.
Right.
And I found it interesting how with Black businesses, there's always this kind of grievance politics where it's just you got to play into the guilt of how much they don't get support, which always ends up demonizing Black people in general, because it's like, well, why isn't anybody supporting us? And it's like, but even in the funny thing is her own book kind of disproves the point. Like, you had to drive to the other side of town to get to a grocery store. You had to go to another city to find this business. So why would Black people who only have so much time and who are often overworked anyway spend any time going all across the world to support Black business? Like, it doesn't logically make any sense. It's like, so even that doesn't make sense. And then her book, where the 6 hour thing doesn't start, but she's the one who kind of popularizes it, at least repopularizes it, because I've been hearing it forever. But like, she has claims in the book about like, well, there's only 11% of white people own their businesses, only 5%, about 5 to 6% of Black people own their businesses. So even on its face, nobody really owns that many businesses. Right. So it just shows you that so if we're trying to get like white people, we only want to own 11%. So it shows even white folks who are in a much better position than us are not economically flourishing because they own a bunch of businesses. That's not why. Like, they're getting paid more. They've taken over other countries. Like, they're not flourishing because of business. So I just found it interesting that and this is consistent with a lot of these people. The stuff they cite often contradicts their own argument.
And even today, as we talked about with the NCRC report, African Americans comprise 9.5% of business owners, but only 2.1% of firms with employees, despite making 13% of the population. And all of, quote unquote, all of that business activity has only allowed Black people to capture 0.3% of national revenue spent on businesses. So again, it's not even just a question of business ownership. It's a question 0.03. I
thought it was 0.8. That means it's down. Because your report's more recent than the numbers I read. Wow.
Yeah. And I used to, in the initial number I had was 1.5%. So it was even lower than that. It's And the link, I think I put it in the show notes to this already, but if not, I'll put it later. But to that report. But again, the point being, and then the other part of it is that I think we've all in some ways have discussed elsewhere, is that even if you could, or if all of us could support all of these Black businesses, most of them couldn't scale up fast enough to accommodate all of the business, and they would collapse under that weight. So that's another part of the problem. And there aren't Black businesses, Black owned businesses in sectors of the economy where a lot of us would need to spend, like in terms of energy and manufacturing and so on and so on and so on.
Yeah,
so
most of it is concentrated in real estate. Most whatever Black wealth does exist, most of it's concentrated in real estate. There are some people trying to get into the tech game, but that ain't really working out. But most Black wealth is disproportionately concentrated. That's why in 2007, when the economy crashed, so much Black wealth was wiped out, because it wasn't, in capitalist terms, diversified. Like, it wasn't in other sectors.
That's right.
So since it was so heavily concentrated in real estate, that wiped out, I think, like half of Black wealth or something. Like, all the Black wealth that have been gained since, I think, 83 up to 2007 was wiped out. Just in one crisis. Yeah. And
check Wall Street on Parade again.com, and we talked about this on a couple shows ago. They're already saying the next bubble is worse, that the discrepancies are, I forgot that it's like 2, 3, 10 times worse than what it was in 06, 07, 08. So anyway, all right. Just moving ahead of here a little bit. Other agencies like the SBA, Small Business Administration, keep track of Black businesses, but the SBA does not compile figures that would allow comparison of how often money circulates within a community. Again, they do not compile figures because there are none. Nobody does that. Private research organizations such as Nielsen and the Chicago-based Target Market News also track Black spending patterns. Rest in peace to their founder. Target Market News no longer operates. But years ago, I had been invited onto one of their supported programs in Chicago and was beaten up by a panel arguing that I didn't know what I was talking about with buying power and all this other stuff. So but even on the issue of circulating dollars, they weren't even supporting that claim either. The available data shows that 43 million Blacks in the United States have about $1.1 trillion in spending power. Additionally, the most recent government data shows there were 2.6 million Black or African-American owned firms nationally in 2012, up 1.9 million or 34.5% in 2007. But what they don't show, that what is shown in that NCRC report that we just said, is that even with this being an increase in Black businesses, they weren't capturing any more of the national revenues spent on business.
Yeah, I was looking at a study that Sandy Darity did with somebody I won't mention because I don't want to get us in trouble. But the study was solid. But he said it says, in fact, Walmart's annual revenue, the largest employer in the U.S., also exceeds all of the 2.58 million Black businesses combined. And this is in 2000.
Say that again.
Walmart's annual revenue, Walmart by itself, so let's put Walmart on the left. Walmart's annual revenue, the largest private employer in the U.S., it exceeds those of all 2.58 million Black businesses combined. So Walmart makes more money by itself as a company than all Black businesses put together. That's the situation. So I just want people to think about, like, if that's what you're trying to do, you're really behind. And that goes to that 0.3% number. Like that exemplifies it right there. Like you're so far behind. You're trying to get your stuff sold at Walmart and Target because you can't compete,
And how did and also to this point about circulation, how did they get there? By entering the global market, which is why so much of their products are made overseas, why they're able to pay so little to their, why they're able to charge so little while paying so little to their employees, while undercutting local businesses, white and otherwise. So, I mean, and that's why I think 7 of the top 15, at least, billionaires are Walton family members. So, that's where their money is circulating.
Right. And this is not to demonize even the black business in that sense. If one business makes more money than all black businesses combined, like that's not even just a racial question. This is a colonial question. It's just a capitalist question. Like, that is ridiculous that one business can own more than an entire quote unquote ethnic group. That's ridiculous. Like, but you never even hear that even when white leftists talk about wealth inequality. Like, that's alarming. And I don't know what wealth inequality means. That's just capitalism. But I'm just saying, like, even when they talk about that, you don't hear that. That is alarming. Like, that's sad. And I'm sure it's actually worse post-COVID and everything else. I'm sure that's even worse.
Yeah.
Because it's 2016. So
that's right. That's right. Yeah, that's a good point. In an email, Nicole Kenny, the writer of the NAACP article, said she used several sources, including Maggie Anderson's 2012 book and data from Nielsen and Minority Business and Development and the Minority Business and Development Agency. Truth Be Told News also contacted the Selig Center about the figures attributed to the Economic Research Unit. Money circulates 0 to 1 time within the black community compared to the more than 6 times it circulates in the Latino community, 9 times in the Asian community, and unlimited amount of times within the white community. In an email, Jeffrey M. Humphreys, director of the center, said, "I've never heard that. It's not from our center, and it does not sound accurate. But I've got no idea what the actual numbers are." I'm assuming is what it said. So. Quickly, for me, this is of course funny. Well, one, because this is what Hill Harper just said with Roland Martin the other day, and our response to that is linked below. And but it's also that Jeffrey Humphreys never responded to my emails, so it's I'm always a little bit jealous, always a little bit. And B. But it's funny that as I'm even saying his buying power reports are flawed at best, to be polite, he's saying even my flawed, well, I'm paraphrasing for him, even my flawed, jacked up reports are themselves being abused by other people claiming that they're saying what we're not even saying. He's like, we're sticking to the one specific nonsensical claim of buying power for our marketing ad people. Don't add all this other stuff to that, So I thought, I mean,
that one kind of cracks it open, because it's like, so the very thing y'all lean on to push this myth, they're even like, nah, bro. Like,
he's even sliding off screen.
Yeah. I don't know what y'all talking about. I mean,
that's them.
This is the scope of our grift. We don't go outside of it. So like that.
My hustle is right here.
Yeah.
Right here.
That was bad. That was real bad. When I read that one, I was like, I've heard this, because I've heard this report. I was like, oh, the Selig Center? And that's why I remember on the Greenwood site, they did the same thing, right? They linked the Greenwood banking app, they linked to the Selig Center claiming circulation, as we debunked on the show. There's no reference of it in the report. Like, they don't. And this dude's like, I ain't even heard of it. I don't know where it came from. So what we're seeing is, like, again, they, this isn't a thing. But continue.
Oh man, because it's not over. This is like another layer of nonsense. It's crazy. The data appears to have first been used in a book by author Brooke Stevens, a financial planner. The book Talking Dollars and Making Sense, a wealth building guide for African Americans, was written in 1996 and cites the 6-hour figure on page 18 of the book. There is no reference to the original source of the data or the study. Stevens attributes the data to a John Ray, who is described as an economic development specialist in Washington. There is no other mention of Ray or the study in the book.
She might as well said John Doe, man.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
Truth Be Told News reached out to Stevens, who lives in Brooklyn, New York, for information about Ray and the study. In an interview, Stevens said Ray and co-author Lee Green did the study over a 6-month period in 1992, possibly through a nonprofit organization that might no longer exist. That sentence is hilarious by itself. I mean, what are y'all doing? What is being done here, man? Possibly through a nonprofit. By the way, quick side note, go back and read that book attributed to Manning Marable. This is what all of it reads like, talking about Malcolm X. Possibly, might, maybe, we don't really know, could have. I don't really remember, but I'm definitively saying.
And similar to that book, people ran with the headlines and made it a fact, right? When it was at best hearsay. So,
anyway, she did not remember the name of the report and could not provide any information about Ray or Green beyond saying that Ray might have taught at Howard University in 1993. The Human Resource Office at Howard said it could not find a reference to Jim or John Ray. In addition, go ahead.
No,
because they couldn't find John Doe. Did they look up John Doe? Is that? I mean, to jump on your punchline, but I mean, it's like
this person doesn't exist. That's why they couldn't find him, because this never happened. That's my personal feelings. I can't prove that, but I don't think this ever happened. Because I wouldn't forget. Would you? I mean, you've done studies in your life. Would you forget a whole that much information? And this is a groundbreaking study. Like, if you did that, that's
and your sole claim, this, you're the sole source for the claim. Like, this is your claim. You should be very clear how you proved the circulating dollar myth, and it should be very off the top of the tongue. That's your elevator pitch right there. That's you got to have that. I mean, that's your thing.
You don't forget nothing. I don't believe you. That's what I'm saying. I don't even believe this. John Ray.
The only thing, though, because we are responsible investigators here, brother, I do at least want to say, for any of us who have had to deal with Howard University's administration process,
fair enough.
They might not find something they need to have found. I just want to put that out there. But anyway. Woo. Okay. In addition, Truth Be Told News was unable to locate Lee Green or any studies co-authored by him. Wow. There was no media coverage of the study that can be found in the LexisNexis research database, and the only reference to the study appears in Stephen's book. Truth Be Told also reached out to Maggie Anderson to see if she remembered the name of the study or could provide any information about Ray. I know Brooke Stevens. I know about the statistic, Anderson said. I did run into her phenomenal research in the study about economic lifespan of a dollar in different ethnic groups. Anderson attributes...
You ran into her research. She don't even know what research is. What did you run into? That doesn't even make sense. So again, I don't believe these people, man, but go ahead.
And I'm sorry too, Black. Phenomenal research.
My bad.
Phenomenal research. Anderson attributes the 6-hour figure in Our Black Year to Brooke Stevens' book. I published her findings in my book, in Our Black Year, and I refer to it whenever I speak and interview.
Findings, right.
I have been promoting that 6-hour statistic quite heavily over the past 6 years. She continues to say how it is the foundation of her work and research commissioned for her year-long empowerment experiment through Stephen Rogers, a professor at the Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern University. Our Kellogg study that less than 3% of our $1 trillion in buying power makes it back to our community via our spending with our businesses and the companies that engage our businesses, she said. I couldn't have read that right. Our Kellogg study proved that less than 3% of our $1 trillion in buying power makes it back to our community via our spending with our businesses and the companies that engage our businesses. So on the one hand, they're using the absolutely demonstrably proven false claim of $1 trillion in buying power to then base part of their, at least a good portion of their study that proves, they say, that only 3% of that $1 trillion comes back to the Black community. What I think that they're really identifying, if they did any research on this at all, is that a mythical amount of money cannot come back into a community that is itself deprived and cut off from wealth producing capability from a variety of reasons we've already been outlining so far today and elsewhere. So it's myth being reified by myth.
Yeah, it's myth on myth, which we find often when we do our shows on the pod. Is there's usually like myths underneath myths. Like there's never just one myth, because that's just not really how the world works. There has to be like a lot of dialectical myths happening at once. But what I find interesting with this is, well, there's a lot of things, but one is like, you got to study out of this. You got to study out of a study nobody can find. You got funded more specifically for a study about a study that nobody can find.
Right.
So the Kellogg Center they have money. Like, you got money to give us more bullshit, essentially, to tell us that we're not supporting each other. And then I think she said earlier about it can create 1 million jobs. Like we talked about in the pod, these people never talk about the quality of the jobs they plan on creating, that they never end up creating anyway. But what are the quality of these jobs? You know, because like we were talking about Walmart earlier, I don't know if we necessarily want to employ a bunch of people like Walmart does. Is that what we want to do? Do we want our people to be so poor they got to get on food stamps? You know, like I'm just saying, like, so even this idea of employing Black people, it comes with its own myth, because it assumes that you're going to employ them in a way that actually helps them live their lives, versus maybe not. I think Dr. CBS said this on some show. A lot of times these businesses become the most exploitative businesses, not because Black people are any worse as business owners, simply because they don't have the amount of capital. So they have to engage in practices a lot of times, not all the time, but sometimes, that aren't necessarily even within labor standards. You know, like I know people who, you know, have to pay their employees, you know, in other ways. They can't pay them officially because they don't want it to be on taxes, you know?
Right.
And so it's just like, I mean, it's just, it doesn't, they never even really speak to the efficacy of Black business owners anyway and what they plan to do. And they don't speak to the efficacy of what it's going to do for the workers. Like there's hardly any conversation about this, because they just throw out a number. We're like, yay, and it never even happens.
It's funny you said that, because I once bartended at a dive bar owned by a Chinese woman specifically. I ran the bar. All the kitchen was run by Latin Americans, and all of us were paid under the table in cash. So I don't know what that says about any of it, but it was just something that popped into my head when we were comparing the Asian ability to apparently do better than we do. and she sure enough paid, you know. Anyway,
I mean, I've worked at corporate, not corporate. I used to deliver pizzas in college, and not to take this story too
Shout
far.
out to pizza deliveries.
Yeah. So the manager, the management there was so terrible. It was a franchise-owned Pizza Hut, and the manager, the shift manager, we used to get screwed over. We had to work till like 7 a.m. Long story. So he would get screwed that we had to work that late. They would tell him like, you need to cut hours, but he couldn't cut hours because it would just be work wouldn't get done. He wouldn't get out of there. So he used to pay us to clock out, and then he would pay us more than we would get on the clock to finish our shift.
How about
and
that?
This is at a Pizza Hut. This isn't even like some small business.
Right.
So I'm saying this is just how capitalism functions. I always say that job taught me more about capitalism than anything I could ever read, because I just saw it up front. Like I saw how that works. So yeah, like businesses are always trying to cut costs logically, even the ones who have a lot of money. So when you think about the ones who don't have as much money, it just logically makes sense that they're going to engage in behavior, not because there's anything wrong with them. It's just the way the economy works. They're going to engage in behavior that might be questionable, you know, in relative to what we call labor standards. Not that labor standards are great either, but I'm just saying, like,
I mean, Amazon is the biggest company in the world. Look how they treat their workers. They don't even treat their workers right. Nobody in this thing treats their people right. So I mean, of course, you know, whatever her name was going to be paying me under the table, and of course I was going to be happy to take it. Like whatever. I mean, you know,
and I'm not. That's what I'm saying. I'm not. We got told to clock out, and we got paid double what we would have made. That's the only way to keep us to stay. He would be like, "You make minimum wage. I'm gonna pay you $14 an hour to stay and work," and he would do it. You know. And this is a manager. It was cheaper for him to pay us out of his own pocket than for him to let us stay on the clock, and he would get fired. So
wow,
like that's how bad this, and again, this is a Pizza Hut. This is not some small, black business on a corner. So I'm saying if that happens there, you already know, no matter how hard they're working, like they, it's just the nature of this thing, So yeah.
Anyway, I just wanted to pull this up quickly because I did try to look up a little bit in preparation for today, at least a little bit. I won't claim to have read any of his work, but Professor Stephen Rogers here, who in 2008 was inducted to the Minority Business Hall of Fame, is described as an entrepreneurship expert, honored for his achievements in advancing business education. And when you look up the books he's written, they're mostly things like entrepreneurial finance and business strategies for the serious entrepreneur, stuff like that. So I don't know the quality of the work, but I would suggest that its bias is in a certain direction, advocating for a certain what I'm describing as mythological understanding of the economic system. So
where is Kellogg at? This is a random
Northwestern. So I'm not sure if I'm not sure if which Northwestern or what, but let me see something here. Whoops. All right, let me just go to the bottom here. Evanston, Illinois, Northwestern University, Evanston, Illinois. So he's the one that is cited as having done the performed the research that we're talking about here. That is often cited by Maggie Anderson. He's the one that was, is cited as the one having done the work with Brooke Stevens, and cited here right here.
Okay,
the long experiment.
That's a good catch. I didn't even see that. Good catch.
Stephen Rogers, a professor at the Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern University. Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to see, if people are going to be putting their names on it, I would, I'll check the chat later. Maybe someone else is more familiar with his work, but he got like Teacher of the Year there, I think 13 times between the 90s and the mid 2000s. So he's well respected in that institution. He's published at least a couple of books with that sort of trajectory I was describing. But if he's concluding that there's a circulating dollar, I would think that he would himself have been more loud in touting that over the years, and in the work. And I feel like in the work I've been doing over the years, I would have come across that evidence had it. But if it's there, someone can send it, or I'll look for it. We'll come back and
somebody has a counterclaim. Please share. But we have yet to find it, as does this article, and as does most of the economic world. Has yet to find any reference that proves this is a thing. But yeah.
Anderson said the study also found that if the middle class Black consumers were to spend a little more, 7% more, just 10% of their spending with Black firms and the mainstream firms that engage them, we can create almost 1 million jobs. So she's even advocating.
That's what I was talking about. That's what I was talking about. I thought it already had been said, but that's what I was talking about. They don't tell you what those jobs are going to be. They don't tell you if it's full-time, part-time. They don't tell you if there's benefits. They don't tell you. They just say 1 million jobs. And you're like, 1 million jobs? 1 million jobs do what? And all these.
But it's also saying not just Black jobs, because it's saying with Black firms and the mainstream firms that engage them. So
yeah, that's a good check. That's a good point. Yeah.
So are they saying? So it sounds like she's saying that somehow, and this would actually work with the argument I've been making, and that I think we're both making, that this would be another way to encourage white corporations to support Black businesses and Black media that targets Black consumers by saying this is part of the return on investment that Roland Martin and everybody's always talking about. And that the 1 million jobs, which isn't, again, to your point, not defined in terms of the quality, would go to whom? Where? They couldn't be in Black-owned firms, because as we were talking about before, and in the NCRC report, I think details very well, Black businesses aren't big enough to take in only 2% of all businesses that have employees are Black-owned. And most of those have one employee, and almost all of them are paid well below even average salary. So,
and I think that goes to another point about we didn't get to talk about this on the show, but this wasn't our questions about scalability, and this is like a business term, so people don't know. Like it's in short, it's the ability to start from literally day one your business and then scale it to a place where it can serve a larger population of people, and you can reach like whatever the peak of that is. That's a very simplified version of it. So for a business to scale, for a business to go from 2 employees to 4, I think sometimes we're taught, well, you just bring in more money, you hire more people, but that's not really how it works. Like if you get to a certain level where it's like, man, I gotta hire like 10 more people. Okay, I also need new equipment now because now I got to service more people. I might need a new building, whatever your business is. And how do you finance that? You're often going to go to banks to finance that, or you're going to go to investors who are white to finance those things. So even when it's a white business of like you think about a Facebook or something like that, they still had to go to get investors so they could build out the server space, right? Like so they could even have the capacity to be what Facebook is. Mark Zuckerberg couldn't just own his own thing. He still owns the majority of it, but
it's not his.
No. So I'm saying you have to get investors, you have to get stockholders. If you really want to scale to that level, you can't do that with your own money. Like that's not. So I'm saying, so even if black businesses were able to scale up, there's a lot of money that's going to come in to even get it to that scale. It's not going to just be, and black people don't have the money to invest like that. So
not only that, and this is another area that I know we're not going to get into today, but the other part of that in terms of getting those investors is ultimately you end up having to get supported and invested in by the state. And that's why you have Amazon's contract with the CIA. That's why you have all the intelligence agencies wrapped up with Facebook. I mean, and Twitter. Yep. This is what you have to do if you want to be that big. So that's why when we were talking about on your show, the Black Bezos that they said my man was in back on Wall Street, like girly, we don't want. What is that? That anyway. Shout out to Craig. I think this is a good point. I would like to look into more myself. That Kellogg is the number 1 marketing school in the country. That would say a lot as well. That's where, that would explain a lot as well. This article talks about the National Urban League State of Black America report. I talk about that in my book. It's been, that and explain the shortcomings of that. That is also something invested in heavily by banks, investment groups, CEOs of this, CEOs of that. And so they have their own political bias as well. So anyway, a little bit more here. Brooke Stevens' statistic about the 6 hours shows why we need to do more to support our businesses and reverse the exploitation of our consumers and the socioeconomic crises our neighborhoods endure, Anderson said. Truth Be Told News also reached out to other Black economic development advocates who have cited the figure, and while many of them had heard of the numbers, not one had actually seen the study that produced them. This to me is...
Sorry.
I mean, seriously,
like I've read this a million times and it's still comedy, but yeah. Oh wow.
I mean, this is a major part of the problem. Nobody's doing their homework. I think some people are doing that intentionally because it's a good applause line, it's a good hustle, but some other well-meaning folks are just not doing their homework. And may he rest in peace, though we heavily disagreed on all of these issues. Ken Smichaels is quoted here, "I've been trying to kill this thing for years," said Ken Smichael, president of Target Market News, a Chicago-based research firm that tracks Black spending patterns. It's just not true. So again, for me, I would enjoy this more if the brother was still alive. I don't want to, I honestly don't get any, the jokes kind of run a little cold for me.
Yeah.
Actually, I didn't know, pun intended there either, by the way. That came out wrong. Like I don't mean to do that, but anyway, but even he is saying this thing, he's even been trying to kill this circulating dollar claim. And his annual report, The Buying Power of Black America, I've already, I've said plenty about that over the years. It's another Selig Center damaged product. There's no scientific way to do that, Smichael said. I mean, how do you do it in terms of measuring the circulation of money being trapped in a community?
That's the thing I've been trying to understand. I was trying to see if there was some methodology for it, but that's what I'm saying. Like, how do you? I don't know if I think I might even say it in here, but how do you even define community? Like I lived in a Black and brown community. So what does that qualify as? It was probably it was like 60-40 Black, brown. Like that was like the breakdown in Indianapolis on the west side. Does that, and it was the hood technically, but I'm saying it was a mixture. So does that qualify as a Black community? Like so I'm saying, like, what would even be the cutoff? Is it has to have 70% of the residents need to be Black? Is it 65? Where's the section that we cut off the quote unquote community? Right, like, what is it from here to here? Like, how many people need to be in a community for it to be a community? What's the population number? Like, none of this stuff ever gets clarified. I'm saying even if you were to do it magically, you would have to have like those type of methods, and then you would still have to show me how I spend money and how all of our money moves in and out. Like, how do you clarify that? Like, and I think they talk about like we're about to get to it. They don't even have information on religion. Like,
there's no scientific way to do that, and which is, by the way, why the Selig Center reports say themselves, we really don't even know how to determine the buying power of any of these communities. These are estimates and projections, because even with that figure, there's to your point, you would have to be in everybody's bank records and account books, and the surveillance would be you would have to have a relationship with the state and have all that surveillance data to be like, how would I know? Because if you buy my book, or if you buy from me in my store, how do they know what I do with the money? How do they know if I give it back to the community or where I put it? How do they know? That would be some spooky shit.
And what's funny is there's enough data maybe today to kind of do that, because if you gave away all your data. Now we're not advocating for that at all. No. But I'm saying now, because of all of the digital information, there might be, I still don't think it could be done, but I'm saying it would be easier to come up with something. But when you make this claim about 1921 in Tulsa, Oklahoma, when there was no digital anything, everything was paper. How would you be able to track that back then when it's not even scientific to do it today? That's how ridiculous that claim is. So it's like they're telling you this article's in 2016. So at this point, everything is online. Everything can, if the state wanted to just take our information, it's all there. They didn't have everybody's bank statements and everything sitting on a server somewhere in 1921. There were no servers. So I'm saying, like, you had a bank book. So how do you even know
Hoover's early records? Something like that. But look, speaking of Howard University, it's what I consider an urban myth, said William Spriggs, a former Labor Department official in the Obama administration and who is now chief economist at the AFL-CIO union. Spriggs also teaches economics at Howard University. Spriggs also told me, to my face, at least off the record, that he also considered the buying power issue to be a myth as well. But anyway, but that's all I got on from him on that so far. Spriggs said a red flag for him was the mention of dollars circulating in the Jewish community for 19 days. So this was a red flag for him. What makes me suspicious is that it has economic data based on religion when the federal government doesn't collect any information by religion, Spriggs says. Where would you get that from?
Yeah, I'm saying, like, how do you, and again, man.
And here they go. He's making your point here. And when you say Asian communities, you're talking about a very diverse population that includes Indians, Chinese, Japanese, Koreans, and they're all different and not a monolithic community. It would be a mistake to try to include all of these different people under one umbrella to talk about spending in communities.
And it also collapses this idea that all these communities are like on some like level playing field as well. Like they have their own class contradictions just like we do. They have their own bourgeoisie, petty bourgeoisie, just like we do. You know, they get exploited. You know, they have their own buffer class, all of that, just like we do. So I mean, if you talk to any of those
every time, correct me if I'm wrong, every corner store I've ever gone to or lived near or went to with regularity always had the same 5 or 6 people in there all the time. So what kind of, I always think, like, what kind of existence are they really having to own that business? They're literally 24, the one, even out here, the one not far from where I live now, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They never close, no matter the weather, no matter the holiday. And it is the same 3 to 6, 5, whatever people all the time. I'm like, what? Yeah. I don't want that.
Yeah,
that's
like
too much work.
Yeah, when I don't want to celebrate Christmas, they're always open. You know what I mean? so it's
and somebody's always standing behind the counter. Somebody's always stocking a shelf.
But
you know
they'll
I'm
tell
like,
you,
that is whack.
They'll tell you that that's because we don't have any work ethic, right? That's the minority myth is Black people don't have any work ethic, and they're willing to sleep with 10 people in a 3-bedroom house. They're willing to sleep on the floor. They're willing to live in cars. They're willing to, that's that idea. It's not, that's largely a myth. Not that they don't work hard, but they're suffering so much more than we are. They're willing to make all these sacrifices that Black people aren't willing to make because we're frivolous spenders, because we're selfish, because we don't want to support each other, but they're willing to do it. That's why the Chinese community, that's why there's a Chinatown and a Koreatown, and why isn't there a Black town? Like, this is the stuff these people always say. So it's like, Black people don't want to support it. As if these people, not the entire groups, but a particular class sector of some of these groups exploit the Black community. Like,
but it's
as if that's not advocated for by the state, who often sets this up.
That's the whole point. That first of all, it's an extreme. That's my point. It's a very tiny handful of their population doing this, because. And even to the point I'm getting at in this extreme microcosmic example, that it's the same 5 people. So it's literally 5 people exploiting the Black community down the street from me. So it's like, that isn't that, and all of it's supported by policy. It's sometimes international government relationships to get with the Chinese in particular. How do the arrangements for X amount of people? And they said, if you're going to be, you can only come here if you're Chinese, if you own a business.
Yeah,
supported by both governments.
So and we know the type of people that leave those countries, even when it's Africans from the continent. I'm saying, like, it's still a certain class of people who get sent over here, and that's hooked up by the state. And again, this is not to disparage the entire communities, because that's another thing I don't like about this is this also creates these type of antagonisms where we can't have solidarity, because your interaction is with those 5 people. Your interaction with Chinese people is with those 5 people. So now you don't like any of them. Because
exactly,
and so then we can't do any work together because, like, you don't like the Koreans or whatever, as if that represents the whole group of people, right?
Yeah, it's the worst of all of these communities that are interacting. That's always, and I don't even, that's always a little bit of a joke, but I mean, I think your point is well taken. It's like we're not, because when you get to like real grassroots radical organization, it is pretty diverse. It does get pretty diverse. There's everybody there. So but that's not the community that's doing the most of the overt discussion.
And if you talk to the people in these communities, they'll tell you they don't like these people either. I'm talking about some of these business owners. Right. They don't like them either. Like, so it's not like we're the only ones that feel some of the hostility. Like, this is how, and I'm not saying every business owner is like that. I've met some who are cool, but I'm just saying, like, those bad experiences that I often hear Black people talk about, which are real, I think sometimes falsely get attributed to the whole group when it's not, it's not really like that.
All right. Yeah, absolutely. He added that even if you surveyed customers about their spending with business, how would you know the religion of the person who owned the business? If I shop at Macy's, I don't know the religion of the person. I was looking at that. I was like, that's a little bit, I mean, technically that's true, but I think if you actually do your research, you could find out the ethnic, religious, cultural, political, racial background of all of the groups in ownership.
Who own the business? Yeah, it'd be easier than who shops there. Yeah.
And I think you could do it. You could even do it to figure out who shops there. I mean, I think that they, even when we look at the Google Analytics for our YouTube channels, like it's very detailed. They get very detailed information about who's coming to the channel. So I think you could do that if you wanted to. But again, to the point we were making before, it would still at the point beyond this exchange at the counter at Macy's, it would require a tremendous amount of surveillance and being in people's business, puns intended, literally and otherwise, to figure out where all of the money ends up going. And I probably think that the establishment would look down on that, because then you would see clearly how the money gets extracted. Something at a time. So like, no. Just keep talking about this circulation shit and don't look too.
Yeah, because I mean, as I'm gonna get to later, like you don't really want to follow the money for real, because then that shows you that's a whole different map. But it's like, yeah, this idea that I question what is really the importance of us even knowing this anyway. You know what I mean? Like, why did we really like what would this myth, even if this myth were true, what would it really actually mean? It would still be an indictment of capitalism, even if it was true. If the money actually does stay for 6 hours, even though no one can prove it, well, that still is not on us. That's not about spending.
This is why I keep saying we are intentionally being forced to confuse marketing and ad data with economic analyses. All this stuff only makes sense. Even to a certain extent, the claim about a circulating dollar, but not even really. But this stuff only really makes sense if you think of it for what it's really intended, to help marketers target their ad spending. That's outside of that. That's why. So even as they continue here, Justin Wolfers, an economics professor at the University of Michigan, cited other problems with the figures used by Stevens and others. First, there's no clear definition of community. Are we talking about specific neighborhoods or as a whole, to the point you just raised to Black a few minutes ago? Secondly, he points out, like Spriggs, that the federal government does not collect economic information by religion, nor does it collect hourly economic activity. It's another interesting point. So So how do you even know by the hour, again, unless you have the tremendous invasive, investigative capabilities of the surveillance state, which I think many of us and businesses included would be uncomfortable with. So anyway, it seems highly improbable, as we should. That's what I'm saying. All right. So look, we could wrap it up here, I think, unless it was something else specific, like because they wrap it up by simply saying
the claim can't be substantiated. That's the part that needs. That's
it right there. It cannot be substantiated, and then they. And in part do that by foolishly coming back on the belief in the buying power mythology, and even the people who promote that myth saying that are used to help them conclude that that the circulating dollar myth can't be substantiated. So it's a confused pretzel of mythology.
It's kind of an extreme of it. It's kind of like they don't. It's like there's a line for them. Like, okay, the buying power, we can like BS these projections because that's all buying power is. The numbers they come up with is like you talked about, just a bunch of projections. It's not based on actual money that we have or wealth that we have. But that's their line. But to go any further to like, this circulation, they're like, we can't even make that stick, bro. Like that's just a little too far for us. Like,
it's not.
That doesn't even make sense. Like, so I'm saying that's just them drawing their line. Doesn't make them necessarily any more ethical. It's just to say, like, we don't even support that, even though they don't necessarily go out of their way to shut it down. Like this is the first time I've ever seen any of them on record. Like, because it's not like they made a campaign to be like, stop saying that. I'm sure those people, because, some of those people were in these same events, have seen when people say that. And I doubt they correct it, because it still benefits the C-League Center and stuff for people to think that Black people don't spend their money correctly, whether it's from 6 hours or whether it's buying power. It's the same end result. It's this idea that, we're dysfunctional, whatever. So that's, for me, I think that's the thing, is like it's always pushed back on us. And I think that's what made me eventually be like, I was joking earlier, like when you brought it up, I was mad. But once I realized, like, man, this is just making us look bad, then it was easy for me to move forward, because it was like, This does that. This distorts the problem, like
That's
completely distorts it. Yeah.
But you wanted to take us a little bit farther on this as well. Are you able to share on your end? Did you need me to do something from here?
I should be. I'm gonna. I mean, it says share screen.
Yeah, because you had another very interesting piece to add to this in terms of, as you said, if people really want to follow the money, what does that map look like? What does that world look like?
Yeah. So I don't need audio. Let me see here. Oh.
And while, just a reminder, please do hit the like, share, and subscribe button, everybody. Appreciate that you all sticking around and joining us.
Is it on the screen or not?
No,
It says it's sharing.
Oh, wait, no, that's on me. That's on me. My bad.
Okay.
My bad.
All right, cool.
But why are we getting that dystopian
let me share the tab.
Black hole effect? Yeah.
Let me share the tab because
share the tab if you can.
I'm used to using Zoom. Sorry for those watching. So I'm gonna use the tab and then I'll just come in and close out. So since I'm using the tab, I'm gonna show this first and I'll show the actual thing. So this is a thing where the SNCC research department. Now what we're gonna reference is SCLC, but I just want to do a little delve real quickly. I'm not gonna go into this much, but I just want to show people like SNCC, SCLC. This is something we don't do very much anymore. Is they used to do what's called power mapping. So they would go into a community and they would find out who's the economic elites of a situation, who's funding the cotton, who owns the farms, and they would power map these things out so people understood like how to organize against it. And that's what we're about to get into is a power map, just to show as an example. So SNCC used to have its own research department, SNCC being the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. I don't think enough people reference this. This is coming out Ella Baker and everything. So let me see here. There was one I think on Mississippi. I don't have time to scroll through all this, but so SNCC, SCLC, they would do these things. So if you read Ready for Revolution, Stokely Carmichael talks about how when he went into Lowndes County, he called, I can't remember the brother's name, he called him up and he just gave him a quick breakdown of what Lowndes County looks like as far as who owns this, who owns that, who runs this. And if you're really trying to target something, you have to do that. It's not enough to just know the general like world breakdown or national. You have to know locally who controls what. And so I'm using this as an example to show if there is such a thing, excuse me, if there is such a thing as dollar circulation, if that is a thing, then it's really just the means of production, and it's who owns those means of production. And our ancestors did a good job of actually documenting this in little small counties. Now, obviously, it changes over time as far as who owns those things based on how markets shift. But they were able to break these things down and give us some sense of like, okay, this is what it is. So I'm going to show.
And you're going to explain further this point about circulation being the means of production.
Yeah. So I'm saying I showed that to show people, just to give people a backdrop of like, we, SNCC, SCLC, the, Southern Leadership Christian Conference, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, they would go into, let's say, I'm going to show Indianapolis as an example, but they would go into a community and they would map these things out. And this is very important. I'm just saying, from even when we were talking about how the buying power myth distorts organizing. If you're organizing, you do need to follow the money, and that's actually circulation. Is who owns the means of production. That's my overall point. That's the circulation, not the person who spends money, but it's the ability to own the means. And the means of production is simply like, this is the means in which the money has to come through. I own the factory. I own the raw material, right? I own the land. And in order to make anything happen, you have to come through that. And that's where the money circulates, not by me owning, a random corner store. Because even if those businesses own those corner stores, they don't usually own the real estate, and they don't usually own the banks that finance that real estate. They don't own the companies that make the resources they need to sell their products. That's a bigger economic conversation than just if you own, you know, some shea butter store on the corner of 38th Street.
It's why the scene in The Founder, in that film, The Founder with Michael Keaton, is one of my favorite scenes in film history. I put it up there with, like, you know, the Hail Mary scene in The Godfather 2, or you know, the one that comes to you with telling you what the deal is, the traitor, and The Godfather. Like, I put it up there with that. When Michael Keaton he plays the guy that takes McDonald's from the actual founders of McDonald's, the hustle he gets from his, I guess, lawyer or banker or whatever, was they own McDonald's, the brand, the store. You become the one that owns the land that the store is on, and you control the store itself.
Yeah, and that's
so the way he got control of McDonald's was not through taking over the store. It was through taking over all of the real estate and the land that all of these McDonald's were placed on and have been placed on. And that's what, anyway, so sorry, go ahead.
That's cool. Like, that's what I'm saying. That's where they get, that's how you get petty bourgeois, because you're just part of the managerial class. You're part of the kind of professional class, but you don't own the actual means. Like I think Stokely Carmichael said it there. If you think about it, I think he said something he was explaining Marxism to a crowd in one of his speeches. This is in Stokely Speaks, and he was saying how there aren't really any black capitalists. They're just lackeys for capital, because they don't own the actual means of production. And that's what it actually would mean to be a capitalist, right? So it's like, you're not even really a capitalist. You're just a lackey of it, and you're a buffer. And that's usually what we see. So I'll get into this. Just want to share this real quick. And again, I just want to give a backdrop before I got to it, because I think people needed to understand, like, another thing in that article, they talk about, like, SNCC handed out a thing called a Mississippi Power Structure. And these were pamphlets that they would hand out to the organizers and to even the people in the community, because you can't walk into a community and not know who owns what, you know, if you're trying to organize against it. And I think these things are important. So let me, there we go. All right. So we're gonna start with number one here. So this is an old thing. I got this from an OG in my city. I saw it immediately. This is years ago, and I just photocopied everything, because this isn't online to my knowledge. And it was called Wealth, Power, and Poverty. So you see my thumb on here, is because I photocopied it. And it's called Wealth, Power, and Poverty in Indianapolis. And again, this was SCLC. They scoped it out. I just found this to be really interesting. I'm gonna.
Are you able to zoom it?
Yeah, I'm gonna zoom in on some of this stuff if I can. If
it
not,
looks like you can you click on the bottom? It looked like it had
yeah, you're right. Yeah, I'll do this. Yeah, that's cool. All right, so you can see that? Yeah. Now this has some. I just grabbed this for you just to show you. Even then, there was still some issues. Even though I stand by this, like this right here, the objectives. They call it consumer education, which I think is better than financial literacy or whatever. And it was to educate the consumer about wiser buying and unfair business practices to promote Black business. So they were still trying to promote it, but at least they were trying to, like, educate consumers on unfair business practices. But it still kind of goes with this idea, as consumers become more aware of improved purchasing and selling techniques, both savings and profits increase, job opportunities open, money is retained and recycled in the Black community. So there's still this idea of circulation that kind of, is in this document, but it's not as pernicious as what we just saw. And this article, or this whole document, still is going to break down the power structure. So what they did, some of this I'm just going to show real quick, because there's not enough time. And if you're not from Indianapolis, you don't even know who a lot of these people are. But these are a bunch of businesses at the time. So you have Eli Lilly, who still runs Indianapolis. That's a pharmaceutical company. You have Butler University, you have Indiana National Bank, Indianapolis Water Company. And what you see here is they actually track the records of all these companies, and with all these lines are showing how they spend money together. This is circulation right here. So all those lines you see coming in and out is like, this is Indiana Gas gives money all the way to Indiana Bank, because the Indiana Bank finances something. Indianapolis Insurance Company gives insurance to a building. Jefferson Corp makes they do construction. and so on and so forth. That this is actually what money's circulating. And notice none of these people are black, and this is all these are all like prominent companies. This is the 1% of Indianapolis. Here is even harder to track. I mean, this stuff gives you a headache. But what you're looking at is, if you see on the side, is all these names. These are all like executives at these companies. And this is all these lines that go back and forth to show how they spend money together. Again, this is what circulation looks like. And and you can see how confusing this looks to our point earlier. Imagine if you did this with millions of people. This is just a city, which at the time was about 500,000 people, and you're only looking at the executives. This is just the 1%. And you see how confusing and mind-boggling, how much of a headache it is to even try to track all these different lines of how they spin together. So what it eventually shows, it says the men represented by the lines on the chart make up the core of what to be called the Indianapolis ruling class. Because of its control over profit-producing wealth, this ruling class is in a position to control virtually all of the major institutions in Indianapolis: the corporations, the law firms, the universities, the mass media, the Republican and Democratic parties, Unigov, which is a terrible policy that happened in Indianapolis, did an episode on that, the foundations, the powerful churches, and so on. And they do form a class of people. They go to the same clubs, the same churches, the same parties, the same schools and colleges. They live in the same neighborhoods, but they're most basically united by the fact that the continuation of their wealth and power depends on the perpetuation of a monopoly capitalist economic system, which allows them to accumulate those profits. So this is what circulation. I'm saying this is circulation. This is capitalism in action. This is just a local example of it. So they break down beautifully. Like all these black dots you see here, they represent the wealthiest people in the city. Now look how concentrated those black dots are. This is where these people live. I mean, this is what I'm saying. This is an amazing breakdown. I wish we still did this stuff. This is where all these people live. So again, this is dollar circulation, if there's such a thing. It's not. We're just using that as a misnomer. It's really just capitalism in action. These people live in the same neighborhoods. And this is back in 1973, but this could also be applied to today, and it's probably much worse. So they talk about one of the upper class enclaves. I'm not gonna go through all of these names because nobody's gonna know what we're talking about. But and generally, they're saying, Michael Gene Turner lives on Pine. He's the president of Stark and Weasel, which is a liquor company, and director of Bowles Seal Fast Corporation, and the Jefferson Corporation. Jefferson is a construction group, I believe. Next to him lives H. Earl Carpart, a corporation lawyer and son of a former senator, Homer Carpart. So if you pay your water bill, if you bank with merchants of AF&B, or if you buy a Stark and Weasel Weiner, which isn't really good for you anyways, but that's a liquor company, some of the profit made off of your purchase money finds its way into the banks of accounts of men who live in this neighborhood. So all these people live in the same neighborhood, and that's how the money gets back. So they broke down the neighborhoods, and this is what we were just talking about. So these people, this is the neighborhood breakdown. So this is like if you zoomed in on some of those black dots, you see how these people all live next to each other. But it's not about the neighborhood. It's not that the neighborhood is doing anything. It's that they own the means of production, and they chose to live in the same place, which is going to raise their property value, which is going to bring them better schools, and they can consolidate their wealth, not because they're white just inherently, but because they own some shit, because they own the means of production. So he gives you an example. So the question is, why does this income indifference exist? For one thing, there's just not enough income in poor neighborhoods for people to live a decent life. The Bureau of Labor Statistics says that if for a family of four living in an urban area to have a modest but adequate income, it needs to have over $10,000 per year in income. Now, obviously, that's, you adjust for inflation. That's different than it is today. Yet less than 31% of black families in the Center Township is Indianapolis, make much money. Why? There are several reasons as lack of income, unemployment, underemployment, and most importantly, low wages. But another reason is that poverty continues with such persistence, and that small amount of income that does come to the black and poor white communities eventually gets siphoned back into the bank accounts of people living in upper class neighborhoods. How does this happen? Now, do you see any mention of black buying power? We don't spend together. That's not his explanation. And Dr. Ball, you can comment on this whenever you want. You can jump
nah,
in.
man, I mean, what is to say? All I'm saying, I'm saying, yep, wow, yep. That's my comment.
Yeah, this is 1973. This is a wonderful breakdown. So what we have here is in demonstrating that circulation. So I read through this. So the analogy here was if you wanted to buy a TV, that's RCA. So if you want to buy a TV and you wanted to go to a shopping center on the west side, that's what they're referring to. This LS Areas. I don't know if that's how you say it, but this LS Areas is the shopping center. So they say if you go to LS Areas and you spend money there, they're going to get some of the money. That money is also going to go to RCA, which goes to their stockholders. And then these two names down here are people who live in the same neighborhood. They're the executives of this company. It's also going to go to FC Tucker and Company. FC Tucker and Company is who owns the building of this shopping center that LS Airs is in, where you went to buy your RCA TV, right?
Wow.
Who financed this building? The Indiana National Bank. So the money, so the interest rate of this building is going to have to be paid to them. Who created this building, or who built this building, constructed it, was Jupil Demar's company. This is a construction company that made this building. And in order for them to get concrete, they had to go to Jefferson Corporation. They're who gave them the resources to construct the building. This is the building. This is the store. This is RCA. This is you. And this is where all your money goes. So unless you own all of these things, which again is the means of production, your money's not coming back to your community. Not because Black people don't spend well, but because you don't own the means of production. And that's owned by a very small group of people, period. And this is just Indianapolis. This isn't even like a breakdown of America. And this misses certain other breakdowns. There's no insurance here, right? So there's no utility bills here. There's no, so there's still things here that's not even being shown. But this is showing you what's actually happening to your money when you want to go buy a TV with your low wages. But somehow your money's supposed to come back.
Wow.
So there's so the diagram shows this is just what I just described. So those names that was just in that breakdown of money, this is the neighborhood that most of those people live in. So again, that money is going back to their neighborhoods, but not because their neighborhood is doing something, but because they work as executives in these companies. And these are the names of those individuals. That's what you saw here. It's hard to see the names, but see Tucker and all of the Tucker folks. Mm-hmm. And then if you come back over here, you see Tucker, right? So these people, Jefferson Corp, they all lived in the same neighborhood. Like that's the situation. So another example could be for the flow of money if it was used in a hog drugstore and buy some tranquilizers made by Eli Lilly and Company and some liquor. The purchase goes to a hog drugstore. So I'm gonna show you the map. It's easier to explain. So here we have, all right, this is us. Just got off work, went to hog drugs, and wanted to get some tranquilizers and some liquor. Right, that's what it says. So if you want to get some tranquilizers, some liquor, that money goes to Eli Lilly, and then these are the executives that work with Eli Lilly that have the same neighborhood. You want to get some liquor, that's Kiefer Stewart Company, and they go there. And I forgot to say, this is random. I forgot to say this. This company eventually got bought by Macy's in 2006. Just a random fact. Yeah. So if you want to go to, so you get some liquor.
So all of that circulation that ended up in that store just ended up inflating that store's worth or value to an even bigger entity to come and gobble it up, further making the point that wealth isn't created by circulating what's in a certain, even within a rich community. Wealth is created by further attracting even more outside capital and investment from something even larger.
Yeah, I mean, because even here with RCA, can't say it right. RCA. Mm-hmm. It says in the document, I didn't screenshot it, but it says in the document most of their stockholders live on the East Coast. So even though I spent my money here for the TV, the stockholders don't even live in Indianapolis.
Right.
So again, if you're talking about being self-sustaining, you got to own all of that. And that's just not how that's not even necessarily how wealth gets created. That's not how capital works. So even if you have a black TV, this is what we were saying earlier about scalability. Let's say you had a black TV. Okay, but who are the stockholders in your black-owned company? Are they all black? Do they all? And then again, it's not just a race thing. So are those people hoarding that money? Is it getting distributed back to everybody that's black, or is it just those certain individuals? So even if you own the black TV, you would have to own the black TV, the black building, the black TV, the black store, the black building, the black bank, the black construction company, the black company that makes the resources. And again, this isn't even everything. That's why I think this one is actually better, because it gives you some of the other overhead costs. Like, I don't remember what AF&B was. It's the only company I don't remember what that stood for. But everything else is Indianapolis Power and Light, Indianapolis Water Company.
I thought you said that was the bank. Did I hear that wrong?
I think so. But I can't. That's the only one. I'd have to look it up. That's the only one I don't remember.
Yeah.
But you see where all this money goes, and this is showing you the actual circulation and how this ends up in the pockets of people who, again, all live in the same neighborhood. This is the breakdown of the people listed in that map. Excuse my thumb. This is the breakdown of all the people you saw over here in these little pockets right here. Most of these people live in this neighborhood.
Hey, by the way, just real quick, it's the American Fletcher National Bank.
Okay, so it was
an Indianapolis-based bank founded in 1839, and then it became Bank One.
Yeah.
So
Bank
anyway,
One.
Sorry. Yeah. BANC.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know Bank One, but that's local stuff. But yeah, all these people live in the same neighborhood. So it says, yeah, there it is. AF&B, the merchants. Now each black dot. That's not it. Okay, I think that's actually all. Yeah, because I didn't want to share the whole document, but like, yeah, that shows you that the money that actually distributes, these people tend to live in the same neighborhood. And I'm not even saying they all collaborated, like, let's all move in together and stay. No, it's just, this is where rich people live. This is where the state gets involved, because the state designates areas like this. They build homes. They know they need these districts. So this is where the city helped assist in this. Now, later on in this document, they go on to talk about this policy called Unigov. And it was basically where the city collapsed all the suburbs into the city of Indianapolis so they could have more economic power and a larger tax base. But they refused to integrate the schools. So to this day, Indianapolis has some of the worst schools because they didn't share any of the resources with the schools. They just created these small townships. And that's how you get money, or that's how you get a decent education. Otherwise, you go to a shitty charter school or an underfunded public school. So before they integrated the city under this Unigov thing, black people used to make up about 30% of the population, which would have grown. Once they integrated Unigov and they collapsed all these suburbs, black people ended up making up like maybe like 13% of the population. If it had stayed on its course, black people make up 30% of the population today. Black people probably it would probably be one of those big black cities, like 60, 70% black people would be the population of the city. And then when they did this in Gary, when Gary tried to do the same thing for black folks, white capital just left. Like Fanon talks about the flight of capital.
And literally went right down the street, right? They created a whole new white town, like down the road from Gary. I did pass through there once a couple of years ago and was like, damn, it's like, it was surreal. It was like you're driving down literally one street, and 1 minute it's all black and like bombed out, looking like a mess. And then 2 blocks later, and all of a sudden you start seeing all this whiteness and stores and investment. And it's like, damn, they literally just
yeah, they literally left. He left Gary for dry. When Gary was like, we're a black city. Like, I don't think Gary gets covered enough. They were like around the 70s, they just left. And Gary looks like it's the most dilapidated. Yeah. It looks like a post-apocalyptic. I mean, it's terrible to this day. It's just and people even walk around there like kind of shamed because it's just nothing there. So yeah, but I'm just saying like this kind of conclusive. I'm saying like that shows you if you want to talk about dollar circulation, it's not about dollar circulation. It's about owning the means of production. And it's like we don't own those means, and we're not going to own them by spending because as you say all the time, that's not how they got their money. This is at a time when segregation had just officially ended, right, on paper. This is at a time the civil rights movement starting to dwindle down. This is right around that time, so they were able to accumulate their wealth all those years without ever having to even compete with anybody else, right? So it's like come on, bro, like that's I'm saying it to kind of just piggyback off. If we're gonna talk about circulation, then we just need to talk about capital. We just need to talk about the means of production and the modes of production, and that's all. That should be the conversation, not some shit about black buying power or whatever, because like they ain't no power in that. So
I only wanted to add quickly that, and I don't even think the site is up and running anymore, but I used to use this site theyrule.net to try to make one of the points in a contemporary sense that you're making here in a much more substantive and detailed way that shows the incestuous nature and relationships through boards of directors of all the major companies that dominate our lives. And so I think, which to me has always been evidence that there is a good deal of overt collusion, because even companies, media companies and others that we think are in competition with one another have shared boards of directors. They're all on the business roundtable together. They're all, they're investing the same. They all have the same broader political interests. So,
you said the business roundtable. It reminded me. I was because when I looked for this document, it was in the same folder that had this is a study group I used to do. It was talking about the Powell memo. And I think his name was John Powell. I can't remember the man's first name, but John Powell, he was a Supreme Court justice, and he wrote a memo to the Chamber of Commerce, and he basically told the business community like we're getting out organized. That's right. Where the business roundtable comes from, because it was like there was a response to like, okay, labor and civil rights is actually whooping our ass. We need to be more organized and coordinate, as if they weren't already doing it, but they need to be more coordinated. And then we get Reagan in the 80s and neoliberalism and all of that. I'm not saying
and Bill Clinton.
Yeah.
That was with the DLC. But no, I think you're right. And in fact, shout out to Kamal's favorite white man. I think Noam Chomsky is the one that put me onto that some years ago, the Powell whole thing, if I'm not mistaken. Because that's what they were saying. They were saying, the civil rights, black power, the leftists, the anti-war folks, the feminists, everybody's becoming a problem, and we're losing control. And the Business Roundtable, and if you look at it today, I mean, all of the big players are in it. It's an overt organization. It's not some whatever conspiracy. And so to suggest that they're not working together, I think would just be irresponsible at best.
Yeah, when people used to say Illuminati and stuff, I'm like, just look at the Business Roundtable. you don't need to call it the Illuminati or the.
It's not
whatever.
all this mystical. Yeah, it's not all this mysticism shit.
It's in plain sight. Like it's stuff like that. It's the corporate boards that everybody sits on. It's you don't need any type of like weird, like blood sacrifice. I don't. You don't need all that. It's just it's right in plain sight. So, yeah.
Well, look, man, we're up on 2 hours. I just want to encourage people to like, share, subscribe, and join to the channel. Support the Black Myths podcast, of course, on our channel, but the podcast itself separately, all of that. And to Black Men, I appreciate you, man. It's been a lot of fun. Thank you for your work. Your great piece that extends some of this in Hood Communist is linked in the show notes, as are I think all the resources we're using here. Or most of them at least, and we can add them as necessary. And we, look forward to hearing from folks in the comments and beyond. But again, thanks, man. Appreciate you. And just real quick, what's anything you can tell us about what's coming next from you or your crew?
We're debating on. I have to make a final decision. We have to take a final vote on the myth for this month. It'll either be something on Cuba or something within the States. I don't know yet. And then we're trying.
There's so many to choose from.
We're trying to do a debate. I'm not going to announce that because it's been hard to get. I don't want to call nobody out, but it's been hard to get certain people that I thought would be down to debate. You know, I guess we don't have enough clout to ask some of the people we reached out to. You know, so, and then some people legitimately just don't have time or whatever. So, but we hope to have a debate organized as kind of a fill-in for next month. And then for Black August, I know you have Dr. George James on tomorrow. Just shout out to that. But we're going to do, and for those who know the backstory, this is kind of funny, but we're going to do a Black August with Dr. George James. And our myth is that Angela Davis was a Black Panther. So if you know some of the back, that's funny. Even, you know, but that's
gonna be dope.
Yeah, but it gives me sometimes I just do this stuff. It gives me an excuse to read certain things, or gives me an excuse to read George Jackson, so I get to go read some of that, because that's really what we want to talk about. Because I mean, debunking it
and to go back and read Joy James on that question.
Yeah. So it's just like it's an opportunity to get into that, because a lot of times our goal is to discuss the myth, but a lot of things can be debunked in like Black Wall Street thing. We really could debunk that in like 5 minutes, just based on a few stats. So a lot of times it doesn't really take an hour to debunk just a simple stat. We got to discuss it on a larger level, because people buy into myths not just because of facts, but there's like a bigger cultural apparatus that kind of pushes this, and it becomes ideological. So this is an opportunity to delve into that history and just talk about that. So yeah, that's what we got coming up.
Right on. As you heard, come back tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. Eastern, where Dr. Joy James is going to join me. And again, I want to thank you for doing this, because I wanted to do this, but didn't have the time and didn't want to interrupt Dr. James. So I appreciate you coming on today to do this special broadcast. No problem.
I'm glad we were able to. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's been fun, man. So I thanks to you and your crew. Of course, thanks to everybody who's been in the chat and hanging out with us this morning and afternoon. And we'll catch you tomorrow morning back here and throughout the week on BPM. So thanks, everybody. And as Fred used to say, peace if you're willing to fight for it. So peace, everybody. Catch you next time. I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.